Let's go to Andrew Clennell now, our political editor here at the desk. I've name-checked you a couple of times this show. It's just not entirely rare, Andrew, but we'll get to that in a moment. But first of all, when we talk about the budget, do people care about the budget surplus? How's it, do you think, resonating in this campaign?
Well, I think it's pretty concerning what we're looking at. Yeah. You know, 5 years of deficits, 179 billion. I think in the next couple of days we'll get the government costings and it might even be 5 or 10 billion on top of that. And I also think it's interesting, which is what I was probing with the Finance Minister, Katie Gallagher, yesterday, as if Labor, if they get in, aren't going to cut. So they're always talking about Peter Dutton's secret cuts. I mean, give me a break, as if they are not going to cut. So this is what the conversation was about yesterday. Could see a budget surplus again.
Well, I mean, that's dependent on a lot of decisions being taken in the future. I mean, you know, it's the budget's under enormous stress, and that's why I think you have to look at ways to invest in the budget, but also find savings at the same time.
Savings means cuts, doesn't it?
Well, savings means efficiencies. I mean, we've found $95 billion in savings through the budgets that we've handed down, and I think, again, Australian taxpayers expect us to continue that approach.
You've been pretty ruthless in attacking Peter Dutton over cuts, but you have to make cuts if you're re-elected, surely, with those budget numbers. You wouldn't rule them out, would you? Well,
you'll see our costings and they'll be there. I mean, the majority of our spending has, all of the costings will be outlined. Where we've done some additional spending, you'll see the ways that we are going to pay for that. But
how are you going to pay for it?
Well, I've been saying for some time, I mean, and indeed, look at my record as Finance Minister, we have found savings through every budget and we'll continue that approach.
Now, they say they've found $95 billion worth of savings over their budgets, but in 3 years, they've employed another 41,000 public servants. They say that's because we cut all the consultants the coalition had, but that's still extraordinary. And you've got a finance minister who represents the constituency of Canberra. So is there a bit of a conflict there in terms of her wanting a bigger public service? I questioned her about this. She, for the first time, sort of spelt out where the 41,000 are. How did we get to a situation where in 3 years in office, we've got 41,000 extra public servants? That's a lot of extra public servants.
So a couple of things there. We converted about 12,000 of those from labour hire, so they were already working in the public service, they just weren't working as public servants, and they cost a lot more because you're paying essentially a labour hire company for that labour. The rest has been going into frontline service delivery agencies. So Veterans Affairs was a basket case when we came to government. Home Affairs, again, a basket case when we came to government. Department of Agriculture was going broke when we came to government. Services Australia wasn't able to deliver the work that they need to do. These are all areas where we've either grown in our responsibility or we want to give a better service to people.
Defence spending, a big one this campaign. We're waiting for the coalition to come up with their plan. It was not entirely underwhelming. It was kind of in line what we thought they were going to do. It's in the outer years. It's more than Labor, but it's to this kind of arbitrary percentage point, which, you know, in a cost of living crisis, people go, well, why are we spending that money? Why are we just trying to get to this level without actually, you know, when we know there's a lot of waste and, you know, defence is so expensive. Why do it that way, Andrew? Why not just say we're going to need to spend billions more because we'll need this equipment, not just 3% of GDP?
I think it's problematic. I think you really need to spell out where the spending is. But I thought one of the most telling and insightful things about this was in the 9 newspapers at the weekend. And I questioned Katie Gallagher on it. Paul Dibb did the Defence White Paper in 1987. Right. I remember studying it at uni. And he was saying, look, when I did that white paper, there were 6 submarines. There are now 6 submarines. There were 100 fighter jets. There are now 100 fighter jets. We just haven't put enough into defence. We've been asleep at the wheel, all the governments. And, you know, this government's doing AUKUS, is taking forever. They're spending more and more on the NDIS. And I think the coalition has a point here. And here was Andrew Hastie, the Shadow Defence Minister, about it yesterday.
We're investing in our defence force because we are living in a more dangerous world. Your viewers know that. Our Prime Minister Albanese has said that many times. We take that reality seriously and we're not going to get caught with our pants down if the strategic environment changes and we find ourselves in a crisis.
And speaking of defence, here is what I think is the biggest Labor gaffe of the campaign on Sunday Agenda last week, not yesterday. That was Murray Watt saying it was akin to the Loch Ness Monster, suggesting Russia had requested an airbase out of the Indonesian government. Clearly, there's been confirmation in the Australian again today that Australian officials knew about that prior to the election campaign. Wouldn't it be an act of good faith to just give them a briefing on it?
Well, Andrew, the opposition is asking for a briefing on something that doesn't exist. I mean, they might as well ask for a briefing on the Loch Ness Monster. This is something that doesn't exist, that they fabricated. Yeah,
just was treating voters, not just the opposition, like idiots. I mean, you're allowed to ask a question. It was there. Anyway, I hope Peter Dutton's not superstitious, hey?
Yeah.
I don't think he is, by the way.
Well, Trudy was actually telling me in the last campaign in Perth, she was on the bus and the Albanese bus, and they left some journos behind, and everyone was joking, no one left behind, you know. So these things can happen. I just wanted to show this because I want to give a shout out to our great cameramen, Dave Turner and Jared Essen, who were involved in pushing this bus and trying to assist. I've got to say, camos, they are fantastic. I remember being in Brazil for the G20 and all the camos went and assisted this lady who'd got a flat tyre while we were sitting at a restaurant. This is what they go and do. Look, it is kind of emblematic about how the wheels haven't quite fallen off, but they have fallen off a bit of the Dutton campaign. You've seen all the way through on Newspoll, it's 52-48. He was 51-49 in early March before the work from home policy. And unfortunately for him, that's going to be on the 6 p.m. packages with the polling everywhere tonight. That's one of those things when things aren't going right for you, they keep not going right for you.
Right. Well, it was interesting when I spoke to David Littleproud, and I'll just give the studio a bit of a heads up here. I want to show you a bit of the exchange I had with David Littleproud about the media and the scare campaigns, because I do think that there's always scare campaigns, right, in any election. David Littleproud was very frustrated with the media this morning, particularly when it comes to the cost of the nuclear plan put forward by the coalition. I'll just bring this up now.
You people don't seem to listen. And I went to the National Press Club and I made it very clear. Our total grid, mixed grid, is $331 billion. Frontier Economics put an all-renewables approach at nearly $600 billion. Yeah. $263 billion cheaper. So I don't know how many times. I don't know how many times. But Laura, with all due respect,
I asked Angus Taylor,
I don't know how many times we have to say
with all due respect, and he said 140 billion. So, you know.
But then where's your question to him? But hold on, Laura. Where's your question to the Prime Minister today, just to challenge him about the $600 million?
Well, I'm not
You are letting him... Well, with all due respect, that's what I'm saying. The Fourth Estate has allowed him to perpetrate lies through this whole campaign about $600 billion for a nuclear campaign that you'd never, ever put the frontier economics, the negative gearing, he's run away from that. And now he's politicising our national security about what was said and what was done and what was known about Russia. You know, I think it's time that the Fourth Estate holds this Prime Minister to account.
All right, DLP. He likes to focus on his interviews on tone. I think he just went outside the playbook a little bit there. When they act like that, they're losing. When they're shooting the messenger, they're losing. Yeah. And I've got to say about this nuclear policy, OK, Labor's done a scare campaign. It's dishonest to say the 600 billion because the Smart Energy Council's a pro-renewables group. And they said between 116 and 600 billion. And you can have a construction of 120. The rest of the cost is always funded by power bills. But, and this is a big but, I was there when Peter Dutton announced this policy. He announced that he was going to build 7 federal government-owned and constructed and operated nuclear power stations, and he didn't give the cost. He didn't give the cost in the first press conference. Yeah. And so he allowed the opening, and they thought they were being clever. You've got to own the narrative if you're going to create the narrative.
And look, I did point out that you are the one that's talked about the Smart Energy Council and the 600 billion. Where does it come from? And they've just kind of weirdly extrapolated the CSIRO. And there's all these reports. I mean, voters can be forgiven for being a little bit confused about this because there's been so many numbers. And look, I think Labor's been more effective at that. And I just want to be really clear on David Littleproud. He turns up every week on my show on a Monday, no matter where he is around the country. He takes the time. He understands that you've got to speak to voters, that you've got to be asked the tough questions and you've got to have an answer. Not many people in that parliament do that. Would you agree?
Well, Chris Bowen doesn't.
No, Chris Bowen doesn't. He doesn't. And he's been on my show once. And he's
Well,
probably
well
gonna
that's
come
once
back.
more than I've had him on.
Well, that's right. So I just want to say...
The only minister on either side not to
And
come on.
I think it's good to have a passionate conversation, debate.
Oh, I thought that was great.
So
it was interesting to see him fire up, though, because that does tell me, unfortunately for the coalition, that they see this slipping away.
yeah, I think they do as well, but I think they are frustrated about the scare campaign that has been allowed to run. And look, I'm not blaming the journos on the bus, but you've got the feedback as well, right? You see it on social media. Who are these journos asking these questions, blah, blah, blah. But what people don't see is the way that both campaigns try to minimise damage, and they try to manage the journos as much as possible. And Trudy points out, Andrew, that they really do everything they can to shut down a follow-up question, because that's where the danger is for the leaders. Right?
Neil Morrison started this, one question per journo.
Yeah.
And Albanese's now made an art form of it, and it is unfortunate. And you know, he's been slow in accepting interviews. I'm hopeful I can get one with him in the next couple of days. I've been talking to their people about it, but that's the sort of scrutiny that you should invite.
That's right.
If there's an election campaign on, because it's an important choice for the nation. And frankly, what have you got to hide in terms of tough questions?
And this is my whole point with Monique Ryan last week. I mean, I know she already said no to us on live television. All I asked her was how the campaign was going. Didn't want to answer the question. It's, you know, none of these parliamentarians or wannabe candidates are victims here. They put themselves up for public scrutiny. You know, the contest of ideas. Anyway, I want to end on this with you because I thought you'd appreciate it. The debate last night with Channel 7, weirdly, Anthony Albanese wanting to be confident but cautious in the last week of the campaign, saying he doesn't even know whether Donald Trump has a mobile phone. Well, Mick Mulvaney cleared it up for us today.
You got his number? You text him?
I'm not sure that he has a mobile phone, the US president.
We're not good enough to have Trump's mobile number, or he doesn't have one.
I don't know, but I know that.
Do you have Keir Starmer's number?
When we have discussions, what we do is we have note takers on both sides.
Mr. Dutton.
I think the answer was no there, Mark. I think that was the straight answer.
I texted with him last time, I think right after the shooting in July in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, that he absolutely has a cell phone, and I sort of disappointed. By the way, the more important answer there from Prime Minister Albanese was when we talk, there's note takers and everything. That's not how Donald Trump works. Donald Trump wants to talk to people like ordinary people. He wants to talk like you and I talk on this program. He doesn't want a bunch of intermediaries. He wants to have a normal conversation. And the world leaders who do well with Donald Trump are the people who realize that and treat him like a normal person and don't go through official channels with note takers and interpreters. Of course, you guys don't have that because mostly you speak English. But that's more interesting to me than whether or not he has a phone.
Very comforting, isn't it? What happens when we get invaded? Anyway, look, I do recall that Scott Morrison and Mike used to text Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence. So I do wonder if Anthony Albanese, he hasn't had a chance to get over there, but he needs to engage there because he can't just rely on Kevin Rudd, for goodness sake.
No,
just answer it straight and say I don't have his number, but it's pretty easy to get in contact with him.
Yeah, big last week, Andrew.
Yeah.
You're going to have fun.
Yeah.
So will I. We'll see you soon.
See ya.